Hi, welcome to this course Introductory Mathematical Methods for Biologists. As the course name suggests, this is a course which would introduce you to some mathematical methods which would be very useful for doing biology. In this first lecture, which is titled as Introduction, so the first lecture is of course introduction to the course, where we will a little bit describe about this course, and we should also answer this following question: why should we learn mathematics? So this is the question that we would try to answer in this lecture. Why should we learn mathematics? So first of all, this course is introductory. It is not a course for understanding detailed mathematical modeling, which is not an advanced course. This is a course mainly meant for students who do not have mathematical training at the undergraduate level. Many of the biology students who do not have any mathematical training after school. So if you are a UG student, a biology student, this could be for you. Or if you are a postgraduate biology student who did not have any mathematical training after school, this is indeed for you. If you are doing PhD in biology and you would want to know some mathematical concepts which is important, this is also for you. So the aim of this course is to help biology students to learn introductory mathematics, which conventionally is not taught in universities and the undergraduate level, is in the BSc, Bachelor of Science, Life Sciences subjects. Typically maths is not taught conventionally. So this is to help those students who did not have mathematics. Also students who take biology as like BTech biotechnology, those students also would want to know mathematics and understand those concepts. So this is also for such students. We will see what we will learn in this course. So first let us think about why should we learn mathematics at all. Like if conventionally it is not taught, why should one learn mathematics? So that's what we would answer first, to try to answer. So let us go through this point. So the important point is mathematics is not like a specialist. We are not going to deal mathematics as a separate specialized topic. We would rather use mathematics as a tool to describe the world around us, and mathematics has been used as a language, as a tool, as a subject, essentially to describe the physical world around us, like whatever we see around us. Of course, you know that in other subjects like physics, chemistry, engineering, etc., those are subjects which they study the physical world around us. They are also the subjects that study physical world around us, and they use mathematics to describe the phenomena typically that we see around us. And you get some special training how to use mathematics to describe the phenomena around us. Now why mathematics? Because mathematics is like a language, just like we would use English or any other language for communicating things that we see. Mathematics is a language for scientific communication to precisely and quantitatively say things. So this is the key word that you would want to remember if you want to quantitatively as opposed to qualitatively. So quantitative is the word as opposed to qualitative. So this is the one could say things qualitatively using English or any other language. One can describe. If it is descriptive, one could just describe qualitatively using the language of our choice, like typically let us say English. For example, like a typical phenomena that we would see in biology is growth. So using English, we could say something is growing very fast or very slow, right? We would say, so you have a bacterial colony or a particular colony growing fast. growing slow. These are some statements that we can make using English, but fast, slow, etc. are relatively qualitative description. But can we quantify how fast is fast, how slow is slow compared to what? Is there a quantification of slow growth versus fast growth? This quantification is possible using mathematics. So, this is one example. There are many other examples where we would observe things around us and we could quantify precisely, make precise, accurate statements. And mathematics is a tool to do this, and this is one reason why we should use mathematics. And this is important to remember, just we said, mathematics is successful in describing and understanding the physical phenomena that we observe. Observe various physical phenomena that we observe. So, starting like many hundred years, when people started thinking about planetary motion, or people start thinking about motion of any particle, even a stone or even an apple or anything that is falling down, moving. So, whenever we started observing motion, which is the things that we would see around us, people started developing some kind of mathematics to describe it, which later known as calculus, like many people contributed it. In the way we teach today, a lot of contribution by Newton, Leibniz, they all used and developed ideas of calculus, even though they had some origins in India, like early 1400, 1500 AD. Indians observing planetary motion had some thought on infinite series, etc., which we will see in this course, where they independently thought of some tools of mathematics which would be useful in describing some things that they observed. Later, independently, probably independently in Europe, 200 years later, around 1600 and 1700, people started developing calculus, which became a revolution in itself and which changed physics as a subject completely. So, that revolutionized physics, this understanding of calculus, and that was successful in describing many phenomena that around us accurately, quantitatively, precisely, and all that. And that changed the way we do physical sciences itself, which helped not only physics but engineering, math, chemistry, and many other subjects. And so that's the first thing. So, just to remind you some history of mathematics, of course, it has very, very long history. We wouldn't go to the very old history of mathematics, of course, from before Common Era, BCE. Of course, the history of mathematics started with numbers and so on and so forth. But something which apart from the knowledge of numbers, etc., in recent phenomena, something that revolutionized our understanding is this thing called calculus. This has some early knowledge in India, some form of introductory form of calculus in infinite series. This is the very beginning of calculus. This was 1400 to 1600, around 1500 AD, that is, or CE, it's called Common Era. So, this is around 1500 Common Era. So, around somewhere around this period, by many people like Madhava. You should read about this, and this is known as Kerala School of Mathematics. You should Google search and learn about, which now known as Kerala School of Astronomy and Mathematics. We will talk about this a little bit later, but that is the beginning of calculus in some sense, and later it became really the way we know it was developed by Newton and Leibniz in the 17th century. So, of course, close to 1700 Common Era, which is AD, people like Newton, Leibniz and all that, and many others used this to describe, Newton in particular used it to describe motion, right, gravity, motion. So that changed a lot of things, and that revolutionized things, and that helped us. So there, they had to invent mathematics, they had to invent many new things. So mathematics was used, some branches of mathematics was invented, some branches, some topics, I would say, in mathematics was invented as a tool to describe the physical phenomena that we observe. Or various physical phenomena that we see around us, like just like motion of planets or falling of an apple, or you could think of motion as a simplest example. So that changed, and that gave us a lot of very interesting insights and changed a lot of things. And later, of course, the probability theory in mathematics was heavily used in many branches, like including quantum physics and statistical thermodynamics and so on and so forth. That also helped a lot in thermodynamics in particular to change a lot of things that we otherwise we didn't know was heavily used to understand many new things about thermodynamics, the things, the world around us. And it also helped chemistry, the quantum revolution helped chemistry in particular. That also helped us the microscopic world around us. And then came an era where people are interested to understand the living world, which is the life which is of our interest, and to understand the science behind the life, how the cell functions and how things function. Of course, mathematics was used in genetics. Many mathematicians and statisticians contributed immensely to genetics. So it helps in many ways. So it greatly helped physics, chemistry and engineering sciences, of course, which is a well-known thing to everybody, but it also helped biology itself. You would know many of the famous people who contributed to genetics are mathematicians, statisticians. And in the post 1950s, as we have more and more, as the biology kind of exploded after the discovery of DNA structure and many things, and as we have more and more tools to probe experimentally, a lot of revolution happened in biology and a lot of new things started emerging. And in understanding the things that is going on inside the cells, a language that we use to describe other things in the nature. For example, the physical world around us, which we would call as the dead things, like the stone or whatever we would see around us, which is not living, which is dead. We use mathematics and it was very highly successful. So the question is, could we extend it, could we use it now to understand the living world as well? Of course, that is the most obvious candidate. We would need to use mathematics to make sense and to quantitatively explain, to understand the phenomena in the living world. And therefore, it is important to learn mathematics to describe the living world, just like we have been describing physical world, physics, chemistry and engineering sciences. Biology is a science where we see things, the living world, but that is also a physical natural world around us, and mathematics is a natural candidate as a language to describe the phenomena, quantitatively, scientifically. So that is the language that one should learn. Interestingly, there is a very famous mathematical biologist made a very interesting statement in an article in which published in PLOS, a journal called PLOS Biology, and let us read out this journal, the statement. The statement is very interesting. The statement is biology is mathematics apostrophe here, note the apostrophe here, this is of mathematics, mathematics next physics only better, mathematics is biology's next microscope only better. So let us understand these two parts, this statement has two parts. So let us understand these parts because it will help us to understand why this statement was made. First of all, the first part which says biology is mathematics next physics only better. So this says about something that we said in the development of mathematics, physics contributed immensely back to mathematics itself, like just like calculus was, a lot of calculus was developed to describe the physical phenomena like astronomy and motion in general. So, and then it became a branch of mathematics. So that immensely helped, and many branches of mathematics was developed as we want to describe the physical world. So the physics, mathematics helped physics, but physics also contributed back to mathematics. And this crosstalk immensely helped both the subjects. So just like physics contributed a lot to mathematics by inventing calculus and many other areas of mathematics, many other fields of mathematics, many other branches of mathematics was immensely helped by the research in physics or the need of learning of the physical world. The biology, the understanding biological world, if we use mathematics to understand the biological world, it will also help mathematics to develop. Some new branches of mathematics might be developed to understand the biological world. That is the implication of the first part. Maybe we don't know. Some new branches of mathematics which is not really used today might be developed so that we could understand the living world. So this might help the mathematics itself, is the first part. Biology is mathematics next, physics only better. And the second part is very useful for biologists. It says mathematics is biology's next microscope only better. Mathematics is biology's next microscope only better. We all know that microscope immensely helped biology to explore biology as a field. The discovery of invention of microscope revolutionized biology, right? So just like microscope revolutionized biology, Professor Cohen predicts that mathematics would be the next microscope. The implication here is that today we have a lot of data available, a lot of experiments can be automated, a lot of technological advance has led to a lot of new data coming every day. There's a lot of genome-wide data, a lot of data every day being produced by different labs. Now, if you want to zoom in and understand what is going on with all this data, we need some tool to zoom into this data and understand this. And Professor Cohen suggests probably that mathematics is this tool. Just like microscope was helping us to zoom into the cellular world, mathematics will help us to zoom in. So this is probably the suggestion here is that mathematics will help us to zoom in to biological data and understand it better. So this is at least so mathematics will help us zoom in. That's the second part. So not only, so there are two parts. One says biology would help mathematics, that is for mathematicians, but for biologists it says that mathematics is like the next microscope where that things that would revolutionize knowledge of mathematics will help us. So this is an interesting article written by Professor Joel Cohen. I suggest that you could Google search these precise words and read this article as a very interesting article. Now coming back to this course, what all we will learn? So in this course, first we would learn graphs and functions. So when we do an experiment, we typically plot graphs, and graphs are related to mathematical functions, formulas. So first we will learn the connection between graphs and mathematical functions. So this is, we do experiments, and experiments would produce some graphs. First of all, how to plot graph, how to think of experiment that would lead to some nice graph. This itself, there are some interesting questions here which we would briefly discuss, but graphs are related to mathematical functions. So this is mathematical functions. So just like what are functions? Just like we would describe, just like sin x, e power x, these are mathematical functions. And many of these graphs that we would get in experiment are connected to mathematical functions and vice versa. So there is a very important connection between graphs and functions, and understanding this is the key in understanding a lot of phenomena. So when we use mathematics to describe phenomena, we would train you to think of the phenomena around us as a mathematical function. Every phenomena, everything that we observe as a function, as a mathematical function, if we could think in that way, it is a training. If we get that training, you could think in that way. And if you start thinking that way, that would open a new world which will help you to learn and gain more insights to the data, to the experiment itself, what experiments you should do, how to design an experiment which would give us a quantitative output. And that quantitative output, of course, can be represented as a graph, and that graph is related to a function. So this connection between graph and function, they would help you to design better experiments. An experiment that would give us quantitative output, and how to analyze the data and how to understand and what insights will we gain. So this is a crosstalk between mathematics, which is a quantitative description, and the experiments that you would do. And this is something we will try to train you. So this is the first aim, is to train you to think in terms of functions, graphs and all that. So that's the first training that we would like to start giving you in this course. Second is, of course, how to use calculus to understand various biological phenomena. So many phenomena like growth, like which we all know, the growth curve, which all of us, every biology student would learn, like various curves, and growth curve is a classic example. There are many such curves, and these are, understanding this curve is very much related to this branch of mathematics called calculus. And this is an important thing to understand, and understanding this would change a lot of things. Understanding calculus will change your perspective completely, looking at the data. Therefore, it is important to think in terms of calculus mathematics when you think about data. So this is something you would describe, in how to think of a phenomenon in the perspective, after the knowledge of calculus, how to use calculus to understand various biological phenomena. We would then describe like vectors, like something with directions, for example, flow, diffusion. These kind of things we will describe, which are phenomena that we would see around you, and how to use mathematics to describe this phenomena. And then we would use Fourier series, Fourier transform. We would have an introduction to Fourier series and Fourier transform. Little bit will familiarize you, because these are things that is very often used in structural biology. So you wouldn't, of course, this is not an advanced course to teach you how exactly to do all this, but it's an introductory course to introduce you what is it all about. What is it all about? And you would get some preliminary understanding of what is Fourier series and Fourier transform and how is it useful. And in the last part, we would have some introductory statistics. Of course, biostatistics is a completely different subject in itself, as a course in itself, but we will have an introductory statistics part where we would little bit describe how this function, this mathematical function, of course, is useful as a probability distribution, etc. In statistics, it will appear, and we would connect them, and we would teach you some basics of statistics, and we would end with describing you how we could use this all knowledge to later do some mathematical modeling of the phenomena that we would see. So, this is the aim of this course. The basic aim is to introduce you to this language of mathematics. So, this is an introductory course, and familiarize you with equations, graphs, so that you get enthusiasm to learn more about it rather than an aversion to look at. If when you see an equation after this course, you will be curious to see what that equation is, what is the meaning of that equation is. That is the aim of this course, and to think of every equation as a graph, which is also an experimental data. So, every equation you would be starting to think as a graph, and every graph can be connected to an experimental data. So, experimental data, graph and equations. So, this kind of things that you would, so this kind of relation, experimental data, is of course related to graph, and this is related to mathematical functions or equations. Mathematical function or equations, and this is of course connected to this. So, there is an all connection. I put all kinds of arrows. So, these three things, we will look at this connection, and this is the aim of this course, to familiarize you with this. So, to summarize, this is an introductory course on mathematical methods for biologists. This is for biologists, and this will help you to learn basics of mathematics to understand biological phenomenon and life sciences. With this, I will stop, and we will start with the next lecture soon. Bye.